Hey there, I'm Iris, Deltarune last week. I just wanted to sit down and talk about chapters 3 and 4 of Deltarune for a little bit. I played through the entirety of them on stream over on Twitch, and I just kind of wanted to make a video about my thoughts and everything. So that's what I'm doing. This is not formatted at all. I do not have a script. I don't even have like an outline of what I'm going to talk about when. So this video might be messy. So before actually talking about the game itself, I just wanted to say, like at the start of my stream of Chapter 3, it was right as the game came out. Well, technically I started stream like a couple minutes before. And like, I just could not buy the game. Like, the Steam page just would not load, and like, other people were having the same problem, and it's just kind of wild to me that, the game is so popular, it broke Steam for a couple minutes. But Chapter 3 itself, might be, like, my favorite chapter. I'm not sure. It had so much fun gameplay variety, and I don't know, a lot of people, I see a lot of people saying it's repetitive, but I just don't really agree. Like, if I do agree that it's, like, repetitive, I don't think that's necessarily, like, a bad thing. I just had a ton of fun with it. All the different mini games and just everything about it. Just like the vibes, you know? Yeah, Chapter 3 is like, there's not much story stuff until like the very end, when the knight shows up, and I'll talk about story stuff and the knight and the identity and theories and the fan base, and I'll talk about that later. I'll get to it. I will talk about the fight against the knight. I guess first I gotta talk about the Shadow Mantle thing, and how fucking terrifying that entire, not a quest line, but like that entire thing you need to do to actually get the Shadow Mantle, and like how it serves as basically a hint towards the weird route, and just how unsettling it is, and the fact that the fight itself is just a 2D Zelda fight, and I am not good at 2D Zelda, so that fight gave me a lot of problems. Getting through that fight, and getting the Shadow Mantle, and being like, oh, okay, so that was the Chapter 3 secret boss. I guess there's just no Shadow Crystal this chapter. And then in Chapter 4, talking to Sham, and they're like, oh, it's a shame you couldn't beat that enemy and get the Shadow Crystal. I'm like, wait, do I need to beat the knight? Then you need to beat the knight. And it's like probably the hardest fight in any Toby Fox game, but the fight itself, as infuriatingly designed as it is to like get into, I think it has a very, very annoyingly high skill floor, compared to like every other boss in the game, and like it's you know, not expected at all, and not really built up to, so like it can feel like heavily reliant on trial and error, but once you do have it down, it is pretty fun. Like, my first time through it took me hours of retrying, and then in my second playthrough for the weird route, I just did it my first time. I was like, wow, that's actually really fun. Chapter 4, I want to say it's not my least favorite chapter. I think the shorter length of Chapter 1, I love Chapter 1, but like, I think that's still my least favorite just because like, it's really short, really linear. Like, of course, again, least favorite doesn't mean bad. I feel like I have to reassert this. But chapter 4 has a lot of weird pacing issues, honestly. It's hard to put it into words, but like while you're playing it, it's like, this is kind of weird. But like all the story stuff, the like character growth for Susie, and there are definitely some standout fights in there. I fucking love Jackenstein with all my heart. The Gerson fight is really, really fun. Probably my favorite secret boss. Well, quote-unquote secret boss. The knight being, like, scripted to happen kind of throws calling them secret bosses out of the window. And the Titan is so... the, like, build up to it, like, where you're climbing up it, and then the actual fight itself... The vibes are immaculate, even if, like, the fight itself is kind of, you know, it's a good fight, but it's not like, wow, this is the best designed boss fight in history. Mike. So, the Mike side boss in Castletown is... kind of infuriating. Just the actual microphone gimmick. I feel it's a combination of the microphone gimmick and like being forced to use a mouse even if you're using a controller. So like that was, you know, it's such a fun gimmick fight. It's a like I don't know. It's a fun gimmick. If it's like just the mic or if it's just the mouse, but it's both, and like it just feels weird, and like it's just difficult to manage. And like if you have mic problems, I had mic problems my first time through that fight, and it just made it really annoying. But there is an option to like map the mic input to like your right click. And that's what I did, and it immediately made the fight way more fun, and I just had fun with it. So with story, I brought up that Susie's character development and like the mentor-student relationship she gets with Gerson is really cool. And I think Susie has just become my favorite character. At first, well, not at first, because Chapter 2 wasn't out at first, but like since Chapter 2, Queen has been my favorite character, just because she's funny. I like funny characters, but Susie is just so well written now, and I am really liking her role in the story as what is probably like the real main character. Something about that, her character arc has just made me really, really like her as a character. Character I didn't like as much beforehand, but now do really like, is actually Ralsei. I didn't like actively dislike him, but he wasn't like one of my favorites. He wasn't a character I particularly like cared deeply for, but the way chapters 3 and 4 flesh him out, and like the new character thing of him knowing everything and just being fucking terrified of it all. I just really like that, and I really like how it has impacted all of his writing, both going forward and retroactively. I can talk. The relationship between Chris and the player continues to be something that I find really fascinating, and it has now only gotten more interesting to me with the introduction of the Knight and the fact that Chris are pretty clearly working under the Knight. I was a firm believer that Chris was the Knight going into Chapter 3, or like coming out of Chapter 2. You get it, probably. But finding out that like they aren't the Knight, but they are definitely affiliated, something about that is just really interesting to me, and I cannot wait to see how it develops, especially because, like, there's it's so heavily implied that Carol is the knight, and, like, at a certain point, something's obvious because it's true. Deltarune fans seem to not be able to apply Occam's razor to anything, and, like, especially now when it's clear that the red herring of Chris being the knight was very, was a very intentional thing. I think having a second red herring and having that happen halfway through the story is going to make, if Carol isn't actually the knight, it's going to make whatever the, like, quote-unquote real reveal is, like, kind of just feel underbaked and not really, I don't know, just not really satisfying. A lot of people seem to just not get that Toby Fox is not a puzzle maker, he is a storyteller. This isn't fucking Five Nights at Freddy's. The story isn't like some big grand puzzle to solve. It is just a story being told in segments. And, like, obviously, theorizing and trying to figure out where it is going is, you know, that is totally cool. I am doing it myself in my head all the time because, like, I'm actively just interested in this story and can't wait to see how it develops. But, like, I don't know where I'm, like, going with this. I just think it's weird that a lot of people are just not treating this like a story and more like a puzzle. Especially because the fact that it is a story is what makes it so interesting, because there are themes and ideas, and it's not just, find my secrets, and then you will understand what is happening. Okay, so I'm gonna talk about my personal theories and readings of the story now. Be warned. So we know that something happened with Des, and we know that something happened with Chris and the bunker. I'm going to assume those two things are related. I'm going to assume that Des's disappearance is the motivation for Carol being the knight. We can assume, based on, like, the unused, like, quote-unquote unused, literally just called unused files, that Des is trapped in the code of the game, which in universe is like a program that connects us, or like the role that we play, because I don't think that, like, it's literally the player, us the person. I think we play a role, and that is what the program is. It connects that role that we play to the world of Deltarune. And, like, the unused files are Des being trapped in that, probably because of whatever happened in the bunker. Probably Chris was involved in that, even accidentally, probably accidentally. And I think Carol is kind of just turning Chris into, like, basically a weapon. And, like, the promise was, like, like, Chris is being used as a weapon for the night, to, like, atone for their mistakes so that Carol can get Des back. That's what I'm going with the whole night plotline. I think causing the roaring is probably the only way to get Des back. So that's, everything is, you know, a setup to get that done. Now, with the prophecy, I think Noelle is the second hero. Because it's like the first hero is the cage with human parts, which, very interesting that that's how it's worded. It kind of implies that the vessel that you make in the Goner Maker at the beginning of the game is the hero instead of Chris. And, you know, whatever the voice was that told us we don't have choices in this world forced us into Chris's body for some reason. The second was the I forget how it's worded. I think it's the girl with hope crossed on her heart. And then the third is the prince from the dark. I do not think the second is Susie, because there's also and last was the girl, at last was the girl. And that just straight up uses like the symbol that's like, not referencing, but like tied to the Rude Buster. So I think the second hero and last was the girl are two separate characters, and I think the second was Noelle. And Susie's existence in the prophecy is what Ralsei hoped would change the outcome. And I don't think anything's going to change the outcome. I think the and only one ending thing that's in the marketing of the game is serious. There's only going to be one ending, but like how we get there is going to change. So no matter what, it's all going to come to pass. But like the weird route is about trying to make Noelle stronger, and like Susie was really mad about whatever the the prophecy she broke, like figuratively, well I guess literally, but the prophecy she shattered that made her hand bleed. I think that has to do with Noelle dying in some way, whether it be a sacrifice, probably a sacrifice to stop the roaring, and or banish the angels' heaven. I think the weird route is about making Noelle stronger to avoid her dying from that, but no matter what, she has to. Even if she doesn't have to, even if the weird route changes how the angels' heaven gets banished, I still think the way it affects, the world or whatever is going to be the same. Maybe it won't even get banished at all. Maybe this will have like a bad ending, and the entire point will be that, the weird route, you try to divert a tragedy from happening, but all you do is cause more problems because you try to stop the tragedy, it still happens, but there is now the extra added bit of just badness added from all the stuff that, happens with Burley being put into a coma, and just the fucking trauma that Noelle is going through. That scene in the Chapter 4 Weird Route was so haunting. Wow, and then the end with... Man. This game's really good. That's crazy. How unexpected.